The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia held talks with Prime Minister Modi in Delhi today in his first state visit to India. But the shadow of the Pulwama terror attack hung over that meeting. While Mohammed bin Salman announced his country's decision to invest $100 billion in India over the next couple of years, he did not say a word on the Pulwama attack when both leaders spoke to the media. Here are pictures of Prime Minister Modi hugging the Crown Prince last night when he arrived here in Delhi, a very warm hug which comes after Mohammed bin Salman's rather warm chemistry with Pakistan's Prime Minister, which was on display in Islamabad just a couple of days before that. Prime Minister Modi's hug of the Crown Prince, in fact, has led to criticism by the opposition Congress here, saying that it was inappropriate. However, India says that Mohammed bin Salman did condemn the Pulwama terror attack in his bilateral talks with the Prime Minister today. In fact, both countries had yet to announce the joint statement. It has been several hours since both leaders spoke to the media, but that joint statement is still awaited. So that language on terrorism is something we do want to take a look at. Now, Saudi Arabia is, of course, very close to Pakistan. It's just announced $20 billion in investments over there. But let's take a look at what both leaders said in their press statements earlier in the day.
पिछले हफ्ते पुलवामा में हुआ बर्बर आतंकवादी हमला, हम इस बात पर सहमत है कि आतंकवाद को किसी भी प्रकार का समर्थन दे रहे देशों पर सभी संभव दबाव बढ़ाने की आवश्यकता है। आतंकवाद का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नष्ट करना और इसको समर्थन समाप्त करना और आतंकवादियों और उनके समर्थकों को सजा दिलाना बहुत ही जरूरी है। साथ ही अतिवाद के खिलाफ सहयोग और इसके लिए एक मजबूत कार्य योजना की भी जरूरत है, ताकि हिंसा और आतंकी ताकतें हमारे युवाओं को गुमराह न कर सके। मुझे खुशी है कि सऊदी अरब और भारत इस बारे में साझा विचार रखते हैं।
जहां तक एक्सट्रीमिज्म और टेररिज्म की बात है, जो हमारे कॉमन कंसर्न है, हम ये बात बताना चाहते हैं भारत को बताना चाहते हैं कि हम आपके साथ हर तरह का कोऑपरेशन करेंगे, चाहे वो इंटेलिजेंस शेयर हो, और न सिर्फ भारत बल्कि सारे जो हमारे आसपास हैं सबके साथ मिलकर काम करेंगे, जो हमारे आने वाली पीढ़ियों के लिए रोशन भविष्य को सिक्योर करेंगे। हम आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करते हैं।
Well, joining us on NDTV this evening, here in the studio with us is Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. He has served in Pakistan, in Karachi as well. Dr. Wael Awad is here in the studio with us after a long time. Great to see you here, sir. We have Michael Kugelman with the Deputy Director and Senior Associate for the South Asia Program joining us from Dubai via Skype, and Adil Boparai of the Congress is with us as well. Ambassador Dogra, to you first. If you were to sum up how this visit went, what would it be?
Well, I think there is a divide midway through in the Indian society, especially the political society, where the expectations were almost next to nothing in terms of the Saudi prince's visit. Government, on the other hand, wanted to extend the warm welcome and the red carpet for a variety of reasons. They didn't want to snub a visitor who is an official guest of India. But the government also in their heart of hearts would have known that to expect too much from MBS, as he is known, would be impractical. Personally, I think personalities often matter a lot, and MBS has done huge amounts of mistakes impulsively and in anger. Impulsively in terms of what he did to Khashoggi, in anger because he does not like Syria. So Syria is suffering from terrorism which was sponsored by Saudi Arabia, and asked the children in hospitals in Yemen as to how severely they are suffering. So to expect a man who supports actions which amount to terrorism and which amount to violence is, I think, being unrealistic. Much more than that, we should realize that Rahil Sharif, the previous army chief of Pakistan, today heads 41-member Islamic coalition and is based in Saudi Arabia. So for MBS to do something which would upset his commander of the Islamic force would be impractical. So he has come here, he has had a short stay of about 30 hours or so, and he is going back without promising anything.
Well, interesting you say that. Michael Kugelman, as you join us tonight, the Indian side has been maintaining now for some days that, look, despite Saudi Arabia's very close, obvious, warm relationship with Pakistan, that in the last 4 years there has been a transformation in the way that they are looking at their relationship with India, that they have a better understanding of India's concerns on terrorism. But look at the optics today. I mean, you had both leaders talking to the press, as is the tradition, and not even a word of condolence, not even a condemnation from the Saudi leader, which was the least one could expect. So does that give you a sense of, just how they really understand India's position on terrorism?
Well, I think you're right that the optics are doubly troubling for India here. We have the Prime Minister giving this big hug to the Saudi leader who, we can assume was involved in this horrific murder of a Saudi dissident, and of course also hugging the Saudi leader who had just been to Pakistan and is one of Pakistan's best friends. But at the end of the day, it's business as usual. I think India certainly has very important reasons to want to continue to work very closely with the Saudis. You look from the lens of energy, for example. I know that India is a country that has significant energy needs and is very interested in looking into deepening energy ties with the Saudis. And as I understand it, we've heard that there could be some Saudi investments in the energy sector in India. So yes, the optics are bad, but I think that the Indian government did the right thing to have this visit and to conduct it in the way it did, because it did derive from useful benefits, such as some very important investments to come out of it. So I think that's the bottom line here.
And well, I think that's very sort of practically articulated on the need, of course, for India to go ahead and welcome the Crown Prince into India. Dr. Awad, your thoughts on that? I mean, at the end of the day, look, India also has to be pragmatic diplomatically. It can't afford to not have a relationship with Saudi Arabia. It has to walk this tightrope. However, do you think that India has walked away with enough, especially on its concerns on terrorism, given everything that has happened last week? We're still waiting for the joint statement. Let's see what that says. But my guess is it won't be anything spectacular.
Well, I think if we look at the Saudi-India relationship, it is a very important relationship, and India have a large stake at the Gulf region for the security, for the Indian expats which are staying in the GCC country. You remember there are 14 million Indian annually, and there are 7 million permanently staying in that part of the world. And I think that's a very important for India, for the security, energy security, and also for the security of the expat who are giving a revenue of $70 billion annually plus to India. Having said that, I would say, look at Indonesia and Malaysia have deferred the visit of the Mohammed bin Salman for difference with the Mohammed bin Salman personally and the Saudi Arabia. So you know that the image of the person at this stage is not good in the West. So I think when there was a terror attack in India, and there was also a visit to Pakistan to be followed to a visit to China, I think India, and I'm sorry to say, but should have deferred the visit as well for some time.
You think so?
I think that should have been the reason why. Why I'm saying so is because there was no strong messages coming from the Saudis in condemnation of such kind of a terrorist attack on India. Secondly, when you know that as Ambassador said, the Saudis are part of the problems. In fact, Pakistan have been used for history. Hillary Clinton said it herself. ISI, CIA, and the Pakistani, the Saudi intelligence have worked and created Al-Qaeda. So all these terrorist organizations active till date in Pakistan have been influenced by Saudi Arabia. So if India does not get out of this visit of much strong commitment from the Saudi to curb those groups against India acting from Pakistani soil, then I think India did not get much of it, except for the investment he promised today. We were in the press conference, $100 billion. He did not speak of sharing intelligence with India. Remind you, in the in Arabic, when he was speaking, he said we will share intelligence with India and the rest of the world. So therefore, he was not even condoling the attack on India soil, and he did not even mention a word of the fighting terrorism. I don't know what was behind the doors, what the joint statement will come up with what, but at the end of the day, he is trying to improve his image with India and with the East rather than with the West, because he's a pariah at the West. He's been seen on those eyes.
Well, and I mean, there is an interesting, I did ask the Saudi foreign minister, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, whom I interviewed. We're just going to play that out about whether he was trying to refurbish his image post-Jamal Khashoggi. So it's interesting what he does say on that. But it's interesting also, Adil Boparai, that the Congress party today has gone on the offensive, after being quiet for almost a week post-Pulwama. Yes, the hug has been criticized, but many say that in diplomacy, you do often have to break protocol. You have to be pragmatic about how you conduct relations with other countries, even with Saudi Arabia, and that this is something that is being made too much of an issue of. What would you say?
We see this as a diplomatic setback for India, and I'll tell you why. This comes consequent to the Saudis and Pakistan saying in Islamabad that do not politicize the listing regime. This comes post the Pulwama attack, and not a single word of public condolences by the Crown Prince. This comes at nothing as far as India is concerned. The least the Crown Prince could have done was to free the Indian prisoners. And I would like to touch upon something which Mr. Modi and the BJP often tom-toms about. They tell us that they've succeeded in isolating Pakistan. I think that's furthest from the truth. The Americans need Pakistan for the Taliban. The Chinese are their all-weather ally. The UAE is giving them financial support. The Saudis have pledged $20 billion. So I think it's time that we must acknowledge that we need to do more. The government's policy seems to be solely focusing on hugging and globetrotting. This is not diplomacy. I understand every country is going to be dictated by their national interests, but the least, given the mood of the hour, given that there is outrage in the country, the least the Prime Minister could have done is that at least not gone and rolled out the red carpet and gone about in that fashion. They could have sent a minister. The manner in which this entire process has turned out, I think, leaves a lot of bad taste as far as India is concerned and as far as the mood of India is concerned.
Well, Ambassador, let me then ask you, about some of the questions that I asked the Saudi foreign minister. To begin with, I did ask about Masood Azhar, and he was at pains to explain that this joint Pakistan-Saudi Arabia statement the other day, which talked about not politicizing the UN listings, was actually a mistake. He says that this was not meant to be a reference to the UN listing. This was meant to be about the Financial Action Task Force, and this is not about Masood Azhar, and that this shouldn't have been there in the first place. When I asked him that, India must have raised the issue of Masood Azhar today, he says, well, I don't have much background on him. I'm not in a position to judge, but normally countries provide evidence and then the UN assesses that and, designates people and groups accordingly. What does that kind of tell you about, it's very clear that the Saudis are walking a tightrope when it comes to India and Pakistan. I mean, he was at pains to also say, we're friends with both of you. Both countries are important to us.
There's an old song called Killing Me Softly. So Saudis are following the Pakistani example of being nice on the face while carrying on with the business as usual. Saudi Arabia, and especially the prince who came here, is dependent on Pakistani security for his personal security. They are acting as a kind of janissar of modern age to ensure that no one bumps him off. And there are chances that, given the kind of resentment that has been there in the royal circles, that something could happen any day. So Saudi Arabia will not do anything that goes against Pakistan. Let's be clear on that. But I want to also clarify, at least from whatever little understanding I have of the region, that it is not a one-sided relationship. They are not doing us any favor by employing, for example, in Saudi Arabia, 2.7 million Indians. The fact is that most of them are doing slave labor and giving enormous riches to Saudi Arabia. Second, unlike Pakistan, which has a trade of only $2.6 billion, India has a trade of $27 billion with Saudi Arabia. And India can afford to divert the oil supplies, say, to Iran or Nigeria or USA, as it is doing, or even Venezuela. So India is not bound to import only from Saudi Arabia. It is convenient to both countries, that's a different thing. But the fact is that let's not treat this relationship as one where Saudi Arabia is doing us enormous favor.
Where they're not. I want that's an important point, and I'd like to take that to Dhruv Jaishankar from Brookings, India, who's joining us from Delhi tonight as well. Dhruv Jaishankar, here Ambassador Rajiv Dogra is essentially not very happy, I would say, with the outcome of the Saudi Crown Prince's visit. There is a sense here among our panelists that the optics were just not right post Pulwama, given the Saudi Crown Prince's visit to Pakistan, this bear hug, etc., and sort of a lack of a very convincing statement on terrorism. What do you think?
Well, no, I think we have to look at the long-term trajectory of India-Saudi relations. And I think three things have happened in the recent past that have changed in some ways Riyadh's view towards New Delhi and the relative importance that India has in the region as a whole. One is in some ways the excesses of the Arab Spring and concerns about the Muslim Brotherhood and where this trajectory might lead. And I think that has led to a little bit more caution on the part of many countries, including Saudi Arabia. The second is oil prices being low and perhaps remaining low. I think we will have blips in the near future. But you will have, in some ways, consistently the declining relevance of oil and gas in the long term. And I think Mohammed bin Salman understands this. And the third big issue is the uncertainty about the United States as a security guarantor in the region. So for all of these reasons, India's relative importance has come up. And so we have seen Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and others in the region starting to reach out to India in the last few years. And this has led to, again, a relative importance of India, a relative decline in importance for Pakistan. This doesn't mean that this will all change overnight, and I think what we have seen happen in Mohammed bin Salman's visits to Pakistan and India reflect that. But I do think that this is part of a structural change that is ongoing and underway. And clearly, the Pulwama attack has created a bit of a complication in what might otherwise have been quite a successful visit.
Well, I think a bit of a complication is perhaps putting it mildly. But I want to ask Michael Kugelman then that when India seeks, for instance, the listing of Masood Azhar at the UN on that global terror list, which, by the way, I think most of us agree is more symbolic than anything else, because, hey, the Jaish-e Mohammed's already on that list, so is the Lashkar-e-Taiba, so is Hafiz Saeed, and, well, look where we are today. But even so, when countries like Saudi Arabia and China, as powerful as these countries are, back Pakistan on these issues, then it becomes harder for India. I mean, China with its veto power, just China alone is blocking that effort at the UN.
Well, yes, you're right. And it's true that, Jaish, of course, has been a UN-designated terror group for a while. It's just the issue of the leader. But I think that unfortunately, we're not going to see much change here. I imagine there's going to be some more efforts to try to get China to change its mind and try to be less of an obstructionist force than the UN when it comes to trying to get Masood Azhar designated. But I just don't think that's something that can work. I think that India is going to need to look at different areas where it can try to put more pressure on the Pakistanis. But you're right. At the end of the day, the whole notion of trying to get the leader of this group designated as a UN designated terrorist, it's symbolic more than anything else. What would really change? To me, it just seems like there needs to be a focus on other things. And this gets to a broader point that was made by one of your other guests, that trying to isolate Pakistan, trying to do things that'll make it feel under pressure, it's not going to be very easy to do that, just because Pakistan is able to count on the support of some very significant players, including China, as well as the Saudis, of course, and the U.S., of course, has its own needs for needing to take a bit of a soft approach still toward Pakistan.
Well, Dhruv Jaishankar, just on the point of the India-Saudi Arabia joint statement, it's actually interesting that here we are late into the night and it's still not here. Yes, it often happens that joint statements do come very late. We've been told it'll be here soon, Maybe that's reflective of both sides kind of pondering over some tricky paragraphs.
It's possible. I think we can only speculate at this point. I think we will have more clarity in the next 24 to 48 hours on not just the joint statement and the contents of the joint statement, but also in some ways the significance of the visit. My sense, just looking at the optics, is that something changed between when Mohammed bin Salman left Pakistan and by the time he arrived in India. But again, I think it would be purely in the realm of speculation now as to what
changed?
that might have been.
What do you think? I mean, let's speculate. We're on Indian television. It's our job to speculate.
We can't say.
What do you think? What do you think changed?
No, I mean, I can't say. I mean, something related to Pakistan. I don't know, and I really honestly don't know what that might be. But I do think I do think we will have greater clarity about the full significance of the visit only in the coming day or two.
Interesting. Dr. Awad, you think so?
I think the Saudis' mindset that they are able to use their money to influence political decision all over the world. They have been using it everywhere they go. They have getting influence. They tried in Pakistan to get Pakistanis into Yemen quagmires. They tried many ways in Syria. They spent more than 200 billion supporting terrorist organization inside Syria. They have been trying. So I think their visit here, they think they can buy the Indian point of view on long terms and their own interest. Because you see, we must see also, I'm quite interested in the point of the geopolitics vacuum created inside the Gulf state, where the United States is moving its troops into the Asia Pacific because there is a vacuum. So the United States would like to see India as well as a part of the saving guard of the Gulf state because of the vacuum the United States is leaving behind. So I think they are playing the American hands rather than playing their own interest on the region. What India has to do in this particular issue is to make sure that their Indian expats have been taken good care of. But the Saudi cannot provide you with that, because Saudi decision, anything that Prince of Saudi does or anybody in the Gulf state to say so, they have to take the permission from the United States and the UK.
Even in these bad times?
Even at bad times, because they are the one who have carried out. Even Mohammed bin Salman himself said that we were doing the American job. He was giving interviews to the American TV and he was saying that, look, we created Al-Qaeda, we created Salafi Takfiri groups all over the world because you told us Islamization because we are selling the petrodollars. You need to find out your path as an Indian, sovereign independent foreign policy in regard to your security concern. Saudi Arabia cannot provide you with security concern when it comes to Takfiri jihadi group, because their money coming to India is destroying the Indian communal, the harmony in India. And that's very dangerous, and I think they need to channelize this money coming to India.
All right.